Hello and welcome once again to the Talk of Tuckahoe. I'm your host, Paul Votano, and today we're coming to you from the BBQ Rotisserie Grill on Knollwood Road in the Greenberg Shopping Center, a restaurant that is owned by the Racanelli brothers, and we want to thank our host, Nick Racanelli. This was formerly Juniper's, if you remember that, and it's a very beautiful place. It's been open since August. And we thank them very much for letting us use the premises. Our guest today is Lynn Dimenna, who is hosting a program on WRTN FM in New Rochelle, 93.5 on the dial, called Welcome to the Club. And Lynn, welcome to the broadcast.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. I'm delighted to be here. Really, it's a thrill.
We're so happy to have you. We've heard so much about the program. It's on, I believe, the second Monday of each month.
That's right.
From 7 to 8.
7 to 8.
Tell us about the concept. How did this all come about?
Well, you know that idea that brews in the kitchen while you're over the sink? Mm-hmm. I've been involved with music for my entire adult life, and only recently began to be aware that that voice wasn't all there was to it. I began to realize, without having a background in acting, that in order to really sing a song, you had to not only know what you were saying, but there had to be something else going behind the lyric.
So you are a performer as well.
Yes,
and we'll
indeed.
get into that later.
Yes, indeed. But with that in mind, I started to read some trade papers, specifically backstage, and was intrigued by a certain column by Bob Harrington called from the Bistro, I think, Bistro Notes, and in it he highlighted cabaret performers, and I started to question what is this form of singing called cabaret. And after about 3 years of reading the articles and other various articles on the subject, I finally began to realize that a lot of these cabaret performers were not getting the airplay that they deserved, certainly based on their talent, because oftentimes a cabaret singer doesn't translate on the air. Not always. Sometimes, very definitely, they do, but sometimes they're not played, in other words, by top 40. And I wasn't hearing a lot of the names that I was reading about. Andrea Marcovici, Karen Akers. Maureen McGovern is certainly a supper club / cabaret singer, and you tend to hear a little more of her because she's recorded some big theme songs, movie theme songs. But the rest of them, just as far as I was concerned, didn't have the recognition that they deserved. So I had an idea. I figured, since the art form was becoming a passion of mine, and I had some microphone experience, some radio background, that perhaps a local station might be interested. So I made a call, and they at WRTN were quite interested in the concept, because they have been playing the music of the 30s, 40s, and 50s exclusively for the last 25 years. And this was adding a new dimension. The voices of the 90s, whose hearts and styles are in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. That became the concept of the show.
And you've had some pretty high-powered guests on up to now as well.
Well, exactly. I with the idea came, the timing was such that Andrea Marcovici happened to be appearing at the Algonquin at that very time, or at least it was probably right before her unprecedented 16-week engagement there at the Algonquin's Oak Room. I sent her my information, my press release, as I recall, a quick little note as to what it was all about. I received a reply less than 48 hours. She would love, and anybody who knows Andrea can almost hear her say these words, "I'd love to do your show. I'd love to do your show." So
now, was this the first show?
That
she was your first guest?
Yes, she was my first show.
Was a year ago.
Which was a year ago, November. And not bad to start with an Andrea Marcovici as your first guest. In fact, I interviewed her on that terrible day come to think about it, it was December, because it was the day of that horrific storm in New
yes,
York, where
yes.
umbrellas were flying all over
Right.
the streets. What a trooper. I didn't do too badly myself coming in from the suburbs, but I made it, in fact, down the Hudson River with the water gushing at my car.
You weren't paddling along, were you?
Almost, just about. But she walked around the block to a studio down there where I interviewed her around the block from the Algonquin on Fifth Avenue. And I, in turn, played, I think, at least 6 selections from 3 of her most recent recordings. She was there at the Algonquin for 16 weeks, 2 shows a night. And in fact, when they couldn't get in to see Old Blue Eyes down the street, they all rushed over to see Andrea. She is a dynamite performer, and I might add, actress slash singer, as opposed to the reverse, and meaning that she is far more effective in person than she is oftentimes on recording, even though I happen to love her recordings as well.
And, of course, you've had some others of equal note.
I was just very fortunate, but also, obviously, I was striking a chord, and there was a need here in that I think my next call was to Karen Akers, as I believe, and I don't think I was able to get her right away, but she certainly was very, very interested, and in fact, I had her on for Mother's Day, my Mother's Day program. I followed Andrea with a young gal, Lynn Dimenna, who is going to be on Broadway before the year is out in a Frank Wildhorn production of Jekyll and Hyde, Scarlet Pimpernel. These are things that have been toured and worked in, I think this company was in Texas, and are heading optimistically to Broadway in the near future. And then I managed to, this was a coup, to pin down Kathy Lee Gifford, who had also just released an album of standards. And as well known as Kathy Lee is, the fact that she sings is not as well, as far as it being probably the most important thing to her. She wasn't going to take her initial job on Good Morning America unless she could continue to sing. That's how important it is. So.
And she's a good singer,
She's
too.
a very good singer, very fine singer. The songwriters love to work with Kathy Lee because she interprets their songs so well. David Friedman, in particular, has written several songs that Kathy Lee has performed with great success at Rainbow and Stars. So she had a very successful first engagement there, and this album followed, and she was anxious to get it airplay. She's from the area, so she gave me a half an hour. I went down and spoke with her in her famous little dressing room there with Cody over the walls, and in fact she was meeting him for lunch right after our interview. And she is a delight. She is as down to earth and sincere as she comes across on television, and I found it just delightful talking to her.
Who are some of the guests that you have lined up in future broadcasts?
Well, I, in fact, have Margaret Whiting is appearing at the Emlyn and the Russian Tea Room this weekend, and I'm going to be speaking to her tomorrow, in fact, and taping a bit of that for a future show. But I have Maureen McGovern, who I just saw in London at the Café Royal, has agreed to be a guest. And that's a real thrill for me because I have admired her for a very long time. And K.T. Sullivan is an up-and-coming cabaret performer who's going to be a guest. And I just had Lucy Arnaz on my last show. She has just recorded a new album of standards as well, called Just One of Those Things, and she's included in it 2 of her parents' favorite songs. It's a very special album.
I'll bet.
Mm-hmm.
Have you tried to get one of my favorites, Rosemary Clooney?
Oh, she's next. She's next.
She is, to me, the greatest.
The greatest.
Yeah.
She is the greatest. It just so happens that her daughter has moved into Darien, where I'm from, Darien, Connecticut.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm going to try surreptitiously to see if I can pin her down. My guess is Rosemary would be more than willing. She is such a good individual that I think next time she comes in to do our stint, I have a feeling I might be able to catch her.
What
So
an artist.
That would be a
What
goal.
An artist.
Yeah.
How would you define a cabaret singer? I know Sinatra to this day calls himself a saloon
singer, yeah.
right? Which is along those lines.
It is along those lines. Cabaret is a term that can be somewhat misleading. I think because of the movie, to tell you the
Yeah.
truth. I think there is some mystery surrounding what exactly goes on in a cabaret, and it just very simply is a more intimate style of performing, where the lyric is the most important thing. The voice, although it's of critical importance in selling the song, there are some lesser vocal ability, performers with lesser vocal ability who can sell a song in a cabaret setting in a way that some of the finest voices on stage could never do. There's an intimacy in cabaret, that a communication that's emphasized. You know, when you're on stage and you're playing a part, you are that character. And in cabaret, it tends to be more of you yourself opening your heart to your audience in a much more intimate way.
How do we get the younger people today to appreciate this kind of music?
Well, you know, this was one of my goals. I taking my lead from the fact that Harry Connick opened some huge doors by
True.
reinterpreting some of the standards.
Feinstein as well.
Feinstein, Natalie Cole with her album. Certainly Linda Ronstadt did us a tremendous favor. And Carly Simon. I mean, there's no end to the people, the performers, who wake up to the fact that those great songs, it's not nostalgia to bring them back. It's just simply touching into or connecting with the same feelings that were true then. They're true now. And I think that's the
Good
way
point.
to reconnect the younger audience who, frankly, in our stressful environment today, even they are recognizing that to get into their car and start listening to, you know, either the one of the three R's, rock, rap, and reggae, it's too stressful. And I think they're all recognizing when they come home, and I'm talking about now the early 30s, you know, late 20s, when they come home, they want some sort of restful type, mellower music, and music that says something and means something and has some kind of a, not necessarily a message, but touches the heart.
You've obviously heard the new Sinatra album with all of these young artists.
I sure have.
You mentioned the artists of the 90s, Luther Vandross,
Yes.
Gloria Estefan,
Yes.
all of those people. So that's going to help as well, hopefully.
The fact that they were so willing and
Bono of U2, I mean,
jumped
of
on
all
the
people. Yeah.
Of all people. But they jumped on the bandwagon there without any arm twisting, an opportunity to sing with a master, and also to again reinterpret some of the great songs that will obviously never die.
Never die.
What's everything old is new again, and what goes around comes around. I mean, there's a reason for it.
Let's talk a little bit about your own career as a singer. You recently appeared at Danny's in Midtown Manhattan.
Danny's Skylight Room. It's Danny's Sea Palace with the Skylight Room Cabaret. And Danny's he's a wonderful Thai host who has a terrific restaurant, I might add. And in the back there is a lovely 75-seat cabaret room. Some of the biggest names in cabaret are there, as well as many, many aspiring performers. He runs a very, very nice room. Technically, they do a good job with their lights and sound, and so anyone who is working on, an act doesn't feel it's quite ready yet for the Algonquin, or just feels a special affinity. Rooms are very strange in that way. There's 88s in the village, whose owner, Irv Rabel, has become a good friend of mine as a result of Camp Cabaret, which we'll discuss. He has it's slightly glitzier feel to the room, but it is in the village, and for those of us who live in Fairfield County, that's a haul. So Danny's is Midtown. It's on 46th Street between 8th and 9th Avenues, and on Restaurant Row, in fact. A very convenient location. So
right by Grand Central, isn't it?
It's close to Grand Central, and it's an easy ride on the west side as well. And I had a sellout crowd, so I'm going back in
Great.
February. Yes,
You've also specialized in singing the Star Spangled Banner at
Yes.
some of our foremost stadiums. Tell us about that.
I did have the thrill of singing the Star Spangled Banner at Giant Stadium for the Notre Dame UVA game. I believe it was '88, and
Kickoff Classic.
Kickoff Classic in August. It was a gorgeous night, and Notre Dame won, by the way.
They usually do.
But I was given the opportunity as a result of a contest that I won on WNEW back now. I think that was '87, and my father, in fact, submitted my tape to the Giant folks to see about replacing Martha Wright, who had been doing the Star Spangled Banner for years. Fortunately, they went with a Met baritone because, to tell you the truth, on a weekly basis, I'm not sure I was fortunate to have that beautiful weather, but to stand out there in the pouring rain or like last week's game would not have been fun. But it did give me, it opened the door to a Yankee Stadium. Brendan Byrne actually was the next one that I did for a Nets game. And I made a tape then following that performance that played at Yankee Stadium and the Yonkers Raceway. And it is a thrilling experience when I sing a very straight version. And when you're out there on the 50-yard line and...
No accompaniment?
A cappella. A cappella. Kept that note in my ear and went for it. And you hear 75,000 people joining in with you at the end because they feel inspired to do so. There's nothing like it. And then getting a high sign from the tech man, that's the ultimate joy.
And Yankee Stadium?
Yankee Stadium was taped. I was not there, but I understand it went extremely well. And then for Yonkers Raceway, they've been playing that for well over, I think, for the entire fall. And I was there one night and was able to join in, which was fun.
Now, you're from Darien. And
I live in Darien right
Okay.
now. I'm actually from Larchmont. I'm a
Oh, you
Westchester
are?
girl. Oh, yes, indeed.
Me too.
Live from Larchmont?
Yeah, sure.
What do you know?
One time or another.
Well,
My parents still live there.
isn't
I didn't
that
know
something?
that.
I didn't know that.
We
but
didn't talk about that before the taping. But in Darien, you were a member of the Darien Players.
The Blue Notes originally, which is a singing group up there, associated with the Stamford Norwalk Junior League. That's where I started, and then I went on to the Darien Players and did performances with them for 10 years. And then decided that perhaps there was something there to pursue even a little more seriously. So I started to do benefits and more things on my own that kind of led to the WNEW thing.
And you also hosted your own TV show for Cablevision.
Well, it was actually for the Darien, not Chamber of Commerce, but Darien has a cable program that they call Darien Dateline, and it highlights various issues that are going on within the community, and I acted as their moderator and host for a number of months.
Now, there was a cabaret symposium earlier this year that you were involved with in Waterford. Tell us about that.
Well, when I met, no, actually it was before I met Margaret Whiting. I heard through the networking that goes on within the cabaret community that there was this phenomena known as Camp Cabaret. And apparently, from what they tell me, 400 auditioners come in on both coasts, California and New York, audition for 36 spots. And I went down one dreary winter day, and in fact it was the day after Billy Eckstine died. And in his obituary that I was reading in the Times, I saw that Skylark had been one of his favorite names. And I said, that's the song I'm going to sing for my audition. And I
Great
think
song.
it was an inspiration because Margaret was very touched. And I was one of the fellows. And that really has cemented my whole experience, because spending a week in an idyllic setting like the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center with the likes of Julie Wilson, Margaret Whiting, Andrea Marcovici was my housemate. I was shared space with Mark McVeigh, who is right now at Rainbow and Stars, in a wonderful production, Leonard Bernstein review. This was just, you can imagine, so inspirational, so exciting. We sang or learned about the art form of cabaret from 8 in the morning till 1 at night for one solid week. It was what they called a total immersion.
Must have been a blast.
It couldn't have been any better. It was a real downer when it was over. We all had to come back to reality.
I'll bet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you yourself arranged a special luncheon for a lot of these cabaret singers. I mean, it was an all-star cast at the Algonquin earlier this year?
It was actually in March, and again, I just had this idea, had a sense from the conversations that I had with them, that many of these, quote, divas, who are not diva-like at all, I must say, never get a chance to really shoot the breeze with each other. They're always performing, and when they are at home, it's very rare for them to get together, quote, for lunch. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So I thought it would be a great idea, and I interested the Algonquin in the idea, and they bought it, and I was delighted, because that's exactly what it was. It was 12 women getting together who had an enormous amount to share with each other. They took their competitive hats off, and they just
Let their hair down.
And chatted. And it was 3 hours of nonstop chit-chat. So it was wonderful.
So there's this, I can't call it a fraternity, sorority, I guess.
Sorority, camaraderie.
Of ladies.
Yeah.
Can any guys break into this
Well,
thing? Or?
as it turns out, Karen Akers, this is a little inside scoop, she had opened at Rainbow and Stars that week and was not feeling well and had to miss it at the last minute. Mary Claire Harron, who is another, she's more than up and coming, she has arrived, wonderful cabaret singer, came with a gentleman friend who it turns out was a historian, musicologist. And he was simply delighted to see this empty chair, so he just nestled himself right next to Margaret Whiting and proceeded to get an earful. She is she's a breath of fresh air, but she is a wealth of information. You know, to be able to talk about Uncle Georgie Gershwin stopping over, and Harold Arlen, and of course Johnny Mercer, who was her beloved, her ideal. And talk about them in a way that makes them so real and so human. You know, he was in his glory. Good. As was she.
Well, before we close out, I'd like to get to know a little more about your family. You say you live in Darien now.
I live in Darien, having lived for 9 years in Rye, 2.5 in Greenwich, and now 10 years in Darien. And I have 4 children. My daughter, in fact, is over in London, and that's why I was there. I was visiting her. She's on a performing arts semester.
Oh, is she going to be a singer too?
Well, she certainly has the background. She has some very solid skills, which will do her well if she decides to make it a career. She's coming back, in fact, shortly, and we'll be discussing, whether she pursues it or not. But she's gotten a great foundation. And I have a son who's away at the Salisbury School, who is a senior and looking at colleges, and then 2 additional sons who are 13 and 14 and in the Darien schools. So it's a full house.
Yeah, sure is. Sure is.
I'm wearing a lot of hats at the moment. Yeah.
Well, Lynn, I want to thank you so much for visiting us with us today here on the Talk of Tuckahoe.
Well,
It's been very enjoyable, and I want to wish you continued success with your program. Welcome to the club. Once again, it's on WRTN FM 93.5 on the dial. Mr. O'Shaughnessy will be very happy to hear us say that.
He certainly will.
And for you, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again on the Talk of Tuckahoe very soon. This is Paul Votano saying so long for now.
Yeah.